Each story reveals a simple truth. The coffee industry isn't nearly as honest as it wants us to believe. Behind every comforting aroma and familiar label, there may be shortcuts, secrecy, and cost-cutting decisions we never knew existed. But this isn't just about coffee. It's about awareness. Because if something as simple as a morning cup can hide so many surprises, what else might be hiding in our kitchens? At Smart Seniors, we believe knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your health. Understanding what you put into your body is one of the smartest things you can do to live longer, feel stronger, and age well. If this video opened your eyes, give it a like. It helps more people discover the truth behind what they drink every morning. And I'd love to hear from you. Which of these coffee brands have you tried before? Have you ever noticed a strange taste, smell, or reaction after drinking your favorite cup? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Your story might help someone else make a healthier choice. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves coffee as much as you do, and hit subscribe so you never miss the next episode of Smart Seniors, where we uncover the truth behind everyday habits, one cup at a time. Because staying informed isn't just smart, it's healthy. What was once a premium, respected coffee has become a shadow of its former self, a product built more on marketing than quality. For the customers who spent decades believing in the brand, that's a quiet betrayal. And as we look back across all these cases, from additives and fillers to chemical contamination, mislabeling, and reformulation, one truth becomes hard to ignore. If some of the most trusted coffee brands in America are cutting corners, hiding ingredients, and changing formulas without telling us, what does that say about the industry as a whole? Behind the comforting aroma of your morning brew lies a world of shortcuts, secrecy, and half-truths. Labels can mislead, recalls can be hidden, and the brands we've trusted for years may no longer be what they once were. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who deserves to know what's really in their cup. And don't forget to subscribe to Smart Seniors, where we uncover the hidden truths behind everyday products and help you make wiser, healthier choices, one cup at a time. So, what have we really uncovered today? From Kirkland's hidden additives that made 100% Colombian coffee taste more like chemistry than nature, to Clover Valley's dangerous recall, where shards of glass were found in instant coffee jars across the country. From Walmart's great value, which quietly stretches its coffee with fillers and cheap starches, to Folgers, where roasting shortcuts create chemicals scientists link to cancer risks. We saw our family's decaf, which wasn't decaf at all, putting people with heart conditions at risk. Then came New Mexico Piñon coffee pods, where the danger came not from the beans, but from the packaging itself. And finally, Yuban, a brand once built on trust, now quietly mixing cheaper beans and artificial flavors into what used to be a premium blend. Between 2019 and 2021, Yuban's parent company, Kraft Heinz, made a major change, without ever announcing it to the public. Trade reports and internal documents later revealed that Yuban's original Arabica-only blend had been reformulated. Instead of using premium beans, the company began mixing in up to 30 to 40% Robusta beans. For those unfamiliar, Robusta is cheaper, more bitter, and contains nearly twice the caffeine of Arabica. It also has higher levels of chlorogenic acids, which can cause digestive discomfort, especially in older adults with sensitive stomachs. This change allowed Yuban to drastically cut production costs while keeping the same iconic packaging and 100% pure coffee claim on the label. But that wasn't the only thing that changed. Independent lab testing found traces of artificial flavoring agents, ethyl vanillin, and 2,3-dimethylpyrazine, chemicals used to mask the harsh, bitter taste of lower-quality beans. None of these additives appeared on the label. The package still looked the same, but the coffee inside was different, and loyal customers started to notice. A 2023 consumer sentiment study by the research firm Mimal showed a 45% spike in negative reviews for Yuban's traditional roast. People complained about a more bitter taste, a strange afterflavor, and stomach discomfort after drinking it. Even the aroma was different, harsher, less natural. The company had also changed its roasting process. To save time and money, Yuban switched to faster, higher-temperature roasting. It shortened production time but had a dangerous side effect. It increased acrylamide levels, the same chemical linked to potential cancer risks that was already found in elevated amounts in Folgers. The result? A cheaper, lower-quality coffee hiding behind a familiar name. And the fallout has been significant. Since the reformulation, Euban's market share has dropped by more than 35%. Yet Kraft Heinz still sells it under the same classic branding, banking on nostalgia and consumer trust. The FDA's guidelines for food contact materials were written long before coffee pods became part of daily life. That means there's no defined rule for what happens when boiling water is pushed through heated plastic and aluminum that's been coated in chemical ink, directly into something we drink. When consumer advocacy groups asked New Mexico Pinon Coffee about this, the company's response was brief. Their pods meet all FDA requirements. But that answer misses the point. The requirements themselves are outdated. They simply don't address the realities of modern brewing systems. And once again, money plays a major role. Pod manufacturers operate in an extremely competitive market, where saving even a fraction of a cent per pod can translate into millions of dollars in profits. That's why cheaper materials, lower-grade inks, and minimal safety testing have quietly become the norm. Convenience comes first, safety comes second. The bigger concern is how widespread this issue might be. Market research shows that over 40% of American households now use single-serve coffee makers. That means millions of people, many of them older adults, may be exposing themselves daily to traces of packaging chemicals without even knowing it. Coffee pods have revolutionized how people drink coffee. But behind the shiny designs and instant convenience, there's a growing question about what else is being brewed in that cup. And if you think packaging chemicals sound bad, the next story takes the problem even deeper. Because this time, the company didn't just change how they packaged coffee. They changed what was inside the bag itself, without ever telling their customers. For decades, Euban was seen as a symbol of American coffee tradition, a name that stood for quality, comfort, and trust. Many people, especially older adults, grew up with it. The promise was simple: 100% Arabica beans, carefully roasted for that smooth, classic flavor. But somewhere along the way, that promise quietly disappeared. Decaf coffee is supposed to bring peace of mind. But this case showed just how fragile that trust really is. When profit matters more than safety, even a simple morning ritual can turn into a hidden health risk. And if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what's next. A case where the problem wasn't inside the coffee beans, but in the very packaging that holds them. For many households, coffee pods are the symbol of convenience. You pop one into the machine, press a button, and within seconds, you have a fresh cup waiting for you. It's quick, simple, and feels modern, especially for seniors who enjoy a no-fuss morning routine. But that convenience might come with an invisible cost. In the case of New Mexico Pinon coffee pods, the problem wasn't in the beans at all. Independent testing by Ellipse Analytics and the Center for Environmental Health found something unexpected. The aluminum lids on certain Pinon coffee varieties were printed with inks that contained chemicals never meant to come into contact with food at high heat. Among those chemicals were benzophenone and 4-methylbenzophenone, compounds often used in plastics and ink to prevent fading under light. When exposed to the intense heat and pressure of a coffee pod brewing system, trace amounts of these substances were found in the brewed coffee itself. Now, to be clear, the detected levels were below the official limit set by the European Food Safety Authority, 0.6 milligrams per kilogram. But scientists warned that even low-level long-term exposure can raise health concerns, especially for older adults whose systems are more sensitive to environmental toxins. What makes this worse is the lack of clear regulation. The American Heart Association has long warned that even small amounts of unexpected caffeine can set off serious reactions in those with pre-existing conditions. And yet, this mislabeled coffee was sold across 15 states in major supermarket chains, such as Spartan Nash, Family Fare, and D&W Fresh Markets. The affected batches carried best buy dates well into 2026, meaning customers could have been drinking it for months before anyone knew. How could such a massive mistake happen? Investigations revealed that the facility responsible for packaging the coffee was processing both regular and decaf beans on the same production lines, without any verification system to confirm caffeine levels. There were no tests, no checks, no final inspection. Bags labeled decaf were filled and sealed, as if that word alone made it true. The FDA's recall database even included reports from consumers before the recall became official. One person with an anxiety disorder wrote that they began suffering from panic attacks after switching to the product, believing it was caffeine-free. Another, diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, reported frightening heart palpitations that their doctor later traced back to caffeine exposure. These aren't small inconveniences. They're medical emergencies caused by pure negligence. So why was this allowed to happen? As with so many of these stories, the answer comes down to cost. Private label brands like Our Family don't actually produce their own coffee. They hire third-party manufacturers that offer the lowest bids. Every extra step of quality control costs money, so corners get cut. To make matters worse, the recall itself was poorly handled. There were no big announcements or public alerts. Most stores relied on small in-store posters that few customers ever noticed. Surveys later showed that the majority of affected buyers didn't even know about the recall until months after it happened. For a product that could cause life-threatening reactions, such a quiet response isn't just irresponsible. It's dangerous. Legally, Folgers is still within the rules. The FDA hasn't set a maximum limit for acrylamide in coffee. But as health experts often say, just because something is legal doesn't mean it's safe. Independent reviews by ProPublica found that Folgers Classic Roast consistently ranked among the top 10% of coffee brands with the highest acrylamide exposure. So why are millions of Americans, many of them older adults, starting their day with a cup that may carry an unnecessary health risk? The answer, once again, is simple: profit. Folgers has no financial reason to change a process that's fast, cheap, and familiar, even if it means higher exposure to a chemical scientists are warning about. If a possible cancer-related compound hiding in your coffee isn't enough to make you uneasy, the next brand on our list brings an entirely different kind of problem. This one wasn't just misleading. It was dangerously mislabeled, putting some of the most vulnerable coffee drinkers directly at risk. For many people, choosing decaf coffee isn't about preference. It's about health. Older adults, those with heart conditions, anxiety disorders, or caffeine sensitivity, depend on that small word decaf to keep their bodies steady and their minds calm. That's why what happened next was so troubling. In 2025, the FDA announced a nationwide recall of Our Family Traverse City Cherry Decaf ground coffee after a shocking discovery. It wasn't decaf at all. Tests revealed that the product, marketed as safe for caffeine-sensitive consumers, actually contained full caffeine levels. For most people, that might just mean a racing heart or a sleepless night. But for someone living with arrhythmia, high blood pressure, or anxiety, it could trigger something much worse: heart palpitations, panic attacks, even dangerous drug interactions. Multiple independent studies have revealed that Folgers Classic Roast contains unusually high levels of a compound called acrylamide. This chemical forms naturally when foods, including coffee beans, are roasted at very high temperatures. The issue is that acrylamide isn't just any byproduct. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies it as a probable human carcinogen, meaning scientists strongly suspect it can increase cancer risk. The FDA's own Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition tested dozens of popular coffee brands, and Folgers ranked near the top for acrylamide content, around 458 parts per billion. To put that into perspective, the European Union's safety guideline for roasted coffee is 400 parts per billion. Folgers goes beyond that line. What's even more concerning is how differently the company handles this in different states. In California, where Proposition 65 requires warning labels on products with elevated acrylamide levels, Folgers includes a health warning on its packaging. But the exact same product, sold in other states, carries no warning at all, even though the acrylamide levels are identical. Whether you're warned or not depends entirely on where you live, not on what's inside your cup. The reason these levels are so high lies in the roasting process. Folgers uses a method known as flash roasting, blasting beans at temperatures often reaching 500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's fast, efficient, and creates the strong dark flavor people associate with Folgers. But it also maximizes acrylamide formation. The darker the roast, the higher the buildup. Here's the striking part. Folgers' own lighter roasts contain up to 60% less acrylamide. So the company knows how to reduce it, but it doesn't. Why? Because darker roasts sell better. They cost less to produce and meet the flavor expectations of longtime customers. Changing the method would cut acrylamide levels, but it would also raise production costs and possibly hurt profits. Industry insiders told Food Navigator that Walmart sources some of the lowest quality beans available on the global market. Beans that are broken, insect damaged, or rejected for not meeting international quality standards. These beans are roasted quickly and packaged with minimal transparency. Now think about the price. Great Value Classic Roast often sells for around $3 per pound, which is less than the raw cost of green coffee beans before they're even roasted, packaged, or shipped. That means Walmart is somehow selling finished coffee for less than it costs to buy the raw ingredients. The only way to make that possible is to stretch the definition of coffee until it's no longer pure. When questioned, Walmart responded that their products meet all regulations. Technically, that's true, because current FDA rules don't forbid using fillers in coffee, as long as the product doesn't explicitly claim to be pure. That loophole lets Walmart continue selling a watered-down blend under the comforting name of Classic Roast. For millions of Americans, Great Value feels like a bargain. But in reality, what they're buying is a hollow substitute, a cup built on shortcuts and cost-cutting. And if that sounds troubling, the next brand on this list takes things one step further. This time, the issue isn't fillers or fake sweetness. It's something scientists have linked to an even more serious concern, a chemical that could affect your long-term health. Folgers Classic Roast has been a household name for generations. Its bright red canisters, the familiar slogan, "The best part of waking up," and its place in American kitchens, have made it one of the most recognized coffee brands in the country. Millions of people trust it to start their mornings, a comforting habit passed down for decades. But behind that familiar aroma may be something that's far from comforting. And that's exactly what the next brand on our list reveals. Walmart's Great Value Classic Roast is one of the most popular coffee brands in the United States. Every year, it sells tens of millions of cans across the country. For many households, it's the everyday choice, a big tub of ground coffee that feels like a great deal. But as the saying goes, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Independent laboratory tests have shown that Great Value Classic Roast isn't quite what it appears to be. Researchers found that up to 15% of its weight wasn't even coffee at all. Instead, the blend contained husks, twigs, and other leftover scraps that should have been removed during processing. While these fillers might not be immediately toxic, they dilute the real coffee, giving you less of what you pay for and more of what the manufacturer wants to quietly get rid of. But it doesn't stop there. Chemical analysis uncovered maltodextrin, a cheap carbohydrate filler often used in processed foods. The FDA considers it safe, but here's the problem. It was never listed on the label. When a product that calls itself coffee contains unlisted additives, that's not just misleading, it's deceptive. Consumer Reports ran taste tests to understand how this affects flavor. Their professional tasters consistently describe the coffee as thin, hollow, and strangely sweet, with an artificial aftertaste that hides any real coffee profile. It turns out there's a reason for that. Maltodextrin costs only about 1/10 as much as coffee beans. Adding it helps Walmart keep prices low, even if it means customers are getting something less authentic. When the recall finally happened, Dollar General's response fell short of what consumers deserved. Some stores posted warning signs, but surveys later showed that fewer than 30% of affected customers ever saw them. Many people didn't learn about the danger until after they had already finished the coffee, or worse, after suffering injuries. For a product this dangerous, such poor communication isn't just negligence. It's a betrayal of customer trust. Behind the scenes, the reason this happened becomes clear. Making instant coffee is a complicated process: grinding, extracting, concentrating, and spray drying beans into powder. Each step requires precision and safety testing. But in companies that cut costs at every corner, safety is usually the first thing sacrificed. Independent research by NSF International found that low-cost instant coffee brands like Clover Valley operate on such thin profit margins that proper batch testing would completely erase their price advantage. Experts call this a race to the bottom, where keeping prices low matters more than keeping customers safe. The timing made things even worse. The recall took place during the peak of winter, the prime season for instant coffee. Elderly customers, families in rural areas, and shoppers who depended on Dollar General as their main grocery store may have been drinking contaminated coffee long before the warnings reached them. What happened with Clover Valley wasn't just an accident, it was the predictable outcome of cutting corners for profit. But as shocking as this case was, it wasn't unique. In fact, physical contamination isn't the only danger lurking in cheap coffee. Sometimes, the problem is more subtle, the kind of hidden trick that looks harmless on the surface but quietly cheats your health and your wallet. So while the label says 100% Colombian, the reality may be far from it. Instead of a clean, authentic cup of coffee, you could be drinking a brew designed to taste acceptable at the lowest possible cost. And if hidden additives and vague labeling weren't worrying enough, the next coffee on this list takes things to a completely different level. Because it didn't just mislead people, it became a real health hazard that forced the FDA to issue a nationwide recall. In January of 2025, the Food and Drug Administration issued an urgent nationwide recall for Clover Valley Instant Coffee, Dollar General's bargain brand that millions of Americans rely on every single day. At first, it sounded like a small issue, but the reason was far more serious. Inside several batches of this coffee, investigators discovered fragments of glass. The FDA classified it as a Class 2 hazard, which means there was a genuine risk of serious injury. Even a small shard could cause cuts to the mouth, throat, or internal damage once swallowed. Imagine taking your usual morning sip, only to find out later that it could have injured you from the inside. This wasn't about bad flavor. It was about physical danger. The recall listed 3 contaminated batch codes, all with expiration dates extending into December 2026. Those batches had already been shipped to Dollar General stores across 48 states. That means millions of unsuspecting customers could have brought home a product that was never safe to drink. What makes this even more alarming is what came out afterward. The Illinois Department of Public Health revealed that the facility responsible for producing Clover Valley coffee had already been flagged 3 separate times in the previous 18 months. Violations included inadequate screening equipment, poor maintenance of machinery, and a failure to perform even basic safety checks. This wasn't bad luck. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Independent tests conducted by consumer labs in 2024 discovered synthetic flavor compounds in Kirkland's Colombian coffee, substances like ethyl acetate and isoamyl acetate, often used in the food industry to fake natural aroma. None of these chemicals were listed on the label. Kirkland uses a method called flash roasting, blasting coffee beans with extremely high heat to speed up production. While this process saves time, it also destroys many of the natural oils and compounds that give Colombian beans their unique taste. To make up for that loss, flavor enhancers are quietly added after roasting. The result is a coffee that looks authentic, but tastes artificially engineered. And it's not just speculation. The Better Business Bureau has recorded more than 200 consumer complaints in the past 2 years. Many customers mentioned a chemical aftertaste that becomes stronger as the coffee cools. One reviewer described it as a synthetic smell that lingers in the cup, while another said it reminded them of flavored syrup rather than real coffee. There's another red flag: the price. Kirkland's Colombian coffee sells for about 40% less than comparable brands that claim to be pure. According to experts from the Specialty Coffee Association, that kind of price gap is almost impossible if the beans were truly 100% Arabica, grown, processed, and shipped from Colombia without shortcuts. The economics simply don't add up unless cost-cutting measures are being taken somewhere along the line. When questioned by food safety journalists, Costco said only that its coffee meets all industry standards. But that answer avoids the real issue. What's actually inside the bag? Unlike premium brands that proudly list origin farms, harvest dates, or roasting details, Kirkland's packaging reveals almost nothing. Just vague phrases like smooth flavor, and medium roast. What if the coffee you drink every morning isn't what you think it is? It smells rich, tastes bold, and feels like the perfect start to your day. But behind that comforting aroma might be something far less pure. Recent investigations have uncovered surprising truths. Almost 1 in 3 coffees sold today isn't truly what it claims to be. Many are quietly mixed with chemicals, fillers, and additives that never appear on the label. For millions of older adults across America, coffee isn't just a drink. It's part of a routine, a moment of calm that starts the day. But what if that very cup could slowly be harming your health without you realizing it? Stay with me, because in this episode of Smart Seniors, we'll explore 7 popular coffee brands that may not be as honest as they appear. By the time you hear the last one, you might look at your morning brew in a completely new way. Let's begin with one of the most trusted names in American supermarkets, Costco's Kirkland Signature Colombian Coffee. For years, it's been known as the gold standard of affordable quality. Shoppers love it because it promises the same rich flavor as top-tier brands, but at a lower price. The package proudly says 100% Colombian. It sounds like a safe, reliable choice. But beneath that label lies a story that's hard to swallow.